Hello, everyone. Welcome back from the break. Thank you for joining us for our next theme. We will transition to our artificial intelligence theme. Again, 3 10-minute, really quick presentations followed by a Q&A with all of the presenters. We will hear from Snowflake, we will hear from the NFL, and we will hear from Cam.ai, one of SBJ's 10 most innovative sports tech companies. Please welcome to the stage from Cam.ai, their CTO and co-founder, Ak Prakash. Ak.
All right, well, hello everyone. First of all, thank you to SBJ for putting on a fantastic show and giving us the opportunity to speak amongst you all. So today we're going to be talking about universal fandom, and just a little bit about myself. We're going to be talking about language barriers, which is a theme that has been one of the standout themes of this conference. But there's no other guy better than me that understands language barriers, because I face a language barrier every time somebody tries to pronounce the last 4 characters of my name. So I choose to go by Ak, and I'm the CTO of a company called Cam.ai, and we are revolutionizing the way sports leagues and entities reach out to fans in their native languages. So a little bit about me. I grew up in India as an inventor, as a hacker. I went to Carnegie Mellon for my degree in AI. I worked on Siri on one of the first versions of a ChatGPT-like system in hindsight. And after that, I did sports-like scouting for really prodigious talent in tech, like finding the LeBrons of tech. And all of these experiences of growing up in an international kind of culture, realizing that anybody can achieve anything, these are really themes that motivated me to start the company we're building today. So our mission statement is unapologetically straightforward. The internet and the digital world today was built for English speakers. It's 2025. It's about time we redesign it for the world. A lot of us say that sports is universal, but I think it's time to burst that bubble and realize it's really not. Most of the world doesn't even speak English, right? And so this is where Cam.ai steps in. So instead of telling you, let me show you what we do.
In Columbus, Ohio, with Palacios on his back. El partido ha arrancado en Columbus. Mucho, pero se va fuera. Pasi está siendo perseguido por Palacios. El partido sigue. La pelota le dio a Palacios en el pecho y luego en la mano. A commencé à Columbus, Ohio pour la Coupe MLS 2020. Nathan est là aussi, il bouge autour de Murillo.
Bougez vite, Illy Sanchez qui se retrouve momentanément.
Barcy est pourchassé par Palacios. Le match continue.
So as you can see, we have the capability of turning any audio-video feed into multiple languages in real time of one of the things we do. And what we've realized here is that many sports entities and brands today are actually sitting on a 12 to 15x growth should they choose to localize and globalize to the world. And I think we heard a lot about that. You know, Sam at Adobe was talking about localization. Amy yesterday was talking about localization. So the numbers are very clear, and not just in the ether, but we've actually shown this. A few weeks ago, we live streamed the Australian Open in Spanish, and AO this year had 4 times the viewership. This is no longer a science experiment. This is real, and the numbers have arrived. But let me remind you here, the goal isn't to just turn content into every language. The goal really here is to make sure that you guys and us, we reach every fan in their native language. And so converting content is merely the first step. Sure, broadcasting on VOD, but then your fan engagement needs to be in multiple languages. Your PR and marketing, your internal training, your ops. You need to become a multilingual organization to go global. And that's what Cam.ai does. Our SaaS platform today enables you across any vertical, any business operation to go multilingual, whether it's something as basic as translating your manuals and internal training to, of course, something as advanced and novel as AI multilingual live streaming. Of course, our team has built this from research for several years, coming from some of the best ecosystems. We regularly publish papers and open source our models. And very recently, our voice models were one of the first generative speech models on AWS Bedrock. The technology today has reached the point where 6 months ago, we were able to stream for days at a 99% accuracy rate and a sub 1 minute offset of the stream. And this was the World Athletics. Funnily enough, we're doing the indoor championships right now as I speak to you on stage. And you know, the old grandma's quote of be good in sports and you'll be good in life, our learnings from sport have been able to enable us to do well in all types of content. You know, we've dubbed movies, we enabled people to talk to each other in any language, and also announced some of the biggest partnerships in AI across media. So we're gunning to be a gold standard in speech-to-speech translation and be there for any of your needs in speech and translations for the sports industry. But a lot of people in research ask me, usually I'm at research conferences and not sports conferences, they ask me, Akshat, how do you think we're going to accelerate AI? And what I've realized working in the industry is that AI anyways is moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's about better decision-making and better frameworks of deployment that will actually accelerate AI. We will accelerate AI, and I think that's powerful. So being in the time in the industry, we've thought about a few things that we can start thinking about to really accelerate that. Before I close up, I want to leave you with that. This one is very important. It has helped a lot of enterprises think about their generative AI strategy in a much clearer light. So do the AI use case map. What do I mean by this? Take the vertical of localization and translation, which hopefully all of you are going to start thinking about after this chat. But you take that vertical and you think about all use cases across all business operations that you have, whether fan-based or internal. And the size of the bubble is the size of your opportunity, right? On the leftmost one, you keep the use cases that are proven out, right? Like something as basic as document translation. And on the right, you keep something that is novel, disruptive, like AI multilingual live streaming. When you've created this map, and I would recommend you think about this, you can actually very clearly draw a line where your organization sits today. And what's interesting to note is that everything towards the left, you should have already started doing yesterday. These are about using AI to increase efficiency on things that you're already doing and save costs. And the right is everything that enables business opportunity in the future. Why I'm saying this is because, of course, there's some hesitance when it comes to adoption and deployment of AI. But when you start thinking about your use cases in this manner, you can start to get into and really learn how to deploy AI on stuff that you can save money and increase efficiency in, and then grow with the use cases to unlock business opportunities. So I really love this quote by Zuckerberg. He said that the cost of being early to AI is not very high, but the cost of being late is extremely high. And we feel thinking about your use cases in the map like this enables you to really accelerate quickly in your adoption of AI. One thing that in hindsight feels really obvious is that we must use human evaluators. Gone are the days of AI that followed statistical machine learning and that had like an accuracy. Usually when people ask us like, what's the accuracy of the translation? Of course we give them the numbers that are on a paper, but what do they mean to fans, right? So I'll give you an example here that is maybe easier to relate to. If I just ask 2 different models to make an image of a player making a touchdown, which one's better? You know, maybe somebody likes the left one or the right one. Generative AI, by its essence, is subjective in nature. So although it sounds obvious, when you're evaluating and deploying AI, you need kind of a standard set of human evaluators on the same metrics to identify which technology might be better than the other, because there is no golden number in generative AI. The third thing we've discovered, especially in the sports industry, is kind of looking under the hood. So those 2 images might look very similar on paper. You do an RFP or you do a POC, and there's 3 people doing it. Everything kind of looks the same, except it doesn't in long-term value add. There's 2 types of AI players today. One that control all 3 layers. They can create the product, the infrastructure, and the models. A great example is Camp AI. There's another company that perhaps thinks about the workflows, orchestration, and product. specifically in generative AI, it's not just about improving the product or improving the UX and building more features, but it's also about improving the quality over time. So it's important to kind of evaluate under the hood on which type of companies can own all 3 layers versus just 2. And more often than not, companies like A might seem slower to start off with because they're doing all 3, but actually are the long-term winning partners for you. And that goes to my 4th point, which leads right into it, is that we must move away from this concept of doing an RFP once and going over. The need, especially in generative AI, since things are moving so quickly, is to approach it with kind of an iterative mindset. You know, if you take the same 2 companies with a company A owning all 3 layers versus a company B owning two of the layers, you might see a graph like this where you do your evals, and 2 months later, the world has changed. So you want to kind of think about a framework of these iterative RFPs where you can see who's owning what layer and who's making the most progress. And that's where I'll give my last statement here. With AI, I think it's important to start getting early. The time is now. I know Dan was playing that game yesterday of like now and never type of thing. This stuff is definitely now, and stuff as bleeding edge as AI multilingual live streaming. Start with the boring stuff, learn what's going on, and then grow with your use cases into the future. So if you want to chat with me, I'm Ak. Again, this is my LinkedIn. Please do connect with me. Anything about your globalization, localization strategy, or even how you're thinking about generative AI and deploying it. Thank you very much, and thank you, SBJ, again.
Thank you, Ak. Thank you very much. We'll keep that here. That's the advancer. Please welcome to the stage from Deloitte, Chad DeWeese, and from Snowflake, Micheline Rabbit.
All right. You guys can hear me?
I mean, it's on.
Thank you guys for having us. Thrilled to be here today. We're going to talk probably around the softer side of AI. I would imagine everybody in this room having the Tech Week attendee list is probably more technical in the way they think about AI than your superiors are. So what we try to do at Deloitte is actually try to give them the confidence to act with the ideas that you guys bring to the table. When you think about where AI is today, it's interesting because I think 99% of you guys saw that coming well before the quotes on the page, and then there's 1% of you guys that see that on a next horizon out there. And I want to meet that 1% in a little bit. But when you see Bill Gates say this is the most impactful thing that he'll see in his lifetime, and when you see Mark Cuban talk about the next trillionaire being someone who understands and can really master the elements of AI, it really starts to light a fire under leagues, associations, governing bodies to start to really understand how to grasp the power of that. And it takes getting your hands into it and seeing the live demos that you guys have shown today and the products that you can hold and feel for them to actually have the faith that AI is actually going to impact the world the way that these smart people say it will. And I do think, and Snowflake's doing a great job of actually bringing it to life, we are as well with our customers, is none of us really understand the full potential that AI is going to bring to our daily lives. We're starting to taste it in small bits, but it's coming more and more, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go. So we'll talk a little bit about that as Micheline digs in.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So in sports, I think Tim Clark said it best yesterday. Is watching full-length live games or races a requirement for being a sports fan? No. But I think it's something we'd all agree is important, an important behavior to foster. And when it comes to live games, obviously, there's no kind of greater competition for a sports fan time than there is right now. Whether that be, opportunities for fans to instead choose to kind of engage with game highlights on a social platform or even just follow that favorite player on their social platform. There's a lot of competition, right? And so it's while it's important to kind of foster all of those kind of fan engagement behaviors, in terms of kind of, maximizing kind of that opportunity to engage fans in live viewing experiences, we're finding that it's really important for sports organizations to really think about how they can start to tailor those experiences for each individual fan. So thinking about things like, is there an opportunity to layer data and insights based on that individual fan's fantasy picks or betting behavior over the broadcast experience? Or is there an opportunity for them to choose the camera angle from the viewpoint of their own favorite player? So just a couple of examples, but obviously a long list of ways that Gen AI can help to kind of operationalize those workflows for personalization at scale. Next one. And of course, the opportunity, to personalize for fans does not end at the live game viewing experience. Sports organizations, like most B2C organizations, are considering how they can be leveraging kind of personalization approaches and Gen AI overall to impact a number of fan touch points. So that can be in the form of personalized shoulder content recommendations or in-stadium concession offers. That can be improving sponsorship targeting or attribution models, or loyalty programs. So figuring out ways that you can really kind of leverage that organic passive fan behavior, such as checking scores or making those fantasy picks, and then also rewarding the fan with something that's personalized as well, right? Like maybe it's an offer for kind of the newest jersey for their own favorite player. Most importantly, obviously, these personalization experiences have to drive value for the fan, right? And so with that comes the opportunity to drive business KPIs in relation.
I think that ties well to what Amy Brooks was saying yesterday around using it to drive personalization, very key to what the NBA is doing. And then Tim Clark tied it in with his rewards program, which when you think about the launch of rewards program, it's the data that fuels the personalization model. Right now, executives are starting to see that and see the results from what AI is able to do to really accelerate those efforts.
For sure. So while possibilities are endless in terms of kind of the way that AI can be leveraged to engage fans, in more personalized ways, if you're just getting started with AI, I'd actually like to, respectfully suggest that you might start by just considering thinking a little bit smaller. Trying to kind of boil the ocean in terms of all of the endless possibilities of AI can often, like in any scenario where you're spreading your bets, can result in a lot of those use cases failing, right? So instead, if you're able to kind of narrow your approach and focus on, the less glamorous use cases maybe, but that, impact a number of teams with kind of operationalizing workflows more seamlessly or just enabling more knowledge sharing throughout the organization, that can really kind of help you get some wins on the board that kind of earn credibility for AI opportunities within the organization that you can kind of build from and leverage from the top of the organization across the organization to kind of gain more support for kind of scaling those AI use cases as time goes on. I come from Amazon. A popular leadership principle at Amazon is earning trust. So kind of one of the things that we're definitely seeing kind of work well for organizations is, again, starting with a few of those kind of key use cases where it's, for example, leveraging AI so that employees are no longer having to spend hours kind of digging for sponsorship terms in contracts in terms of end dates and campaign delivery requirements, et cetera. Or, chatbot analysts that can enable non-technical staff to crucial game day insights very, very easily, or really just kind of auto-generating insights across the board. A lot of ways that you can kind of take some of these use cases to earn that trust and build credibility across the organization so that you can start to kind of open up more of those doors to do kind of the more glamorous things.
I think Micheline said it well of trust, and what you'll see on the page here is what I hope a takeaway for you all will be, if you're gonna start to scale AI, you gotta do it in a trustworthy manner. The framework you see kind of looks like that like BOGO wheel that you buy or you see on a website when you're trying to buy new sneakers. But we developed that over a long period of time with our tech partners in the US and globally, and then also with our top 100 clients across the globe. And I think everybody in here has seen and heard the term ethical AI, and then the jokes that go around that. What we found when we took this across the globe is ethical AI works well in the US, but whose ethics are you talking about when you go somewhere else? So the concept of trust has really resonated and really taken some core business principles that now can expand into what we're doing with AI. we've also put it in terms that people can understand and put it, there's much more detail that you guys can find online around how this thing works. But we tried to create that simple framework to give executives a rubric when they're evaluating whether or not AI solutions will be for them. At the end of the day, if it's not something they can touch and feel, it's not really technology that they have developed and see themselves. And you go to someone like Commissioner Bettman, who is around at the NHL before web pages existed. He needs to understand what are the things that are going to be guaranteed with the solutions that you guys and others are trying to sell and they're trying to implement as they go through the process of adopting AI. I think Ms. Chalene said it well too, start simple. What I see in sport, and I love this about sport, is part of the reason why I spend all my time here, is everybody's looking for the headline. What's that cool, flashy thing that I can do that's going to get me in Sports Business Journal? It's going to get me on stage or help me win that award that Dan's going to present. And when you do that, you start up here in the top right of what's that kind of scalable thing that I can use and I'm going to really get some coverage around. Those are great. Actually, I'm all for those. They do help build the brand, but then when you want to see AI actually deliver impact, you kind of get it back to the fundamentals of what I'm seeing now across big and small organizations is the data layer that's necessary to really fuel AI when it's combined with the public models isn't ready yet. So there's a lot of enterprise data work that has to happen. And then back up to the test and learn approach as you start to scale before you can actually get all the way up to scalable solutions that are delivering the value that we all hear about every single day. So anything to close?
No, I think we covered it.
Thank you guys for time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.
Great to be with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to our, well, actually you can, oh, yeah. All right, we're going to our third and final presentation of the artificial intelligence theme. And then right after this, all of the presenters will come back up. A reminder, they'll all come back up for a Q&A. Please put your hands together for Jeff Miller from the NFL. Jeff.
Yep, that's me. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here and for the opportunity to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and the National Football League, or at least one application of artificial intelligence at the NFL. I spend a fair amount of my time looking at the health and safety of our sport, looking for ways to decrease injuries, ways to identify, ways to improve equipment, plays, play types, behaviors that could potentially be eliminated from the game or changed to try to make the game safer and decrease injuries. Well, along the way, artificial intelligence became one of those tools. And at the risk of showing you something that you have seen many, many times before, if you watch our games, I figured I would start with an ad that we worked with our friends at AWS on that has been shown in NFL broadcasts over the last season or so.
The NFL has taken huge strides to ensure player safety by creating the Digital Athlete, which runs millions of simulations. An AI injury prediction tool powered by AWS that captures real-time data for every player to identify when players are at the highest risk for injury. And teams are using it to create personalized training and recovery programs, making the game safer for those at the heart of it. That's the future of player health and safety.
So since that jammed my entire talk into 30 seconds, I can be really brief with the rest of this. The Digital Athlete is a tool that we've used really more as a platform for the clubs, as well as for the league as a whole, to try to better understand our game. So what is it? And here's the story on the Digital Athlete. We were looking at, this goes back probably 7 or 8 years now, how to decrease the risk of concussions in our sport. Obviously a notable injury, one with significant time loss and one with other health implications for our players. And we started working with a good engineering group that took a look at this point, probably in the neighborhood of about 2,000 on-field concussions. We broke those down with the help of engineers, biomechanists, physicians, neuroscientists, and others. We broke those down, each one into about 150 different variables. Play type, position, where the impact existed on the helmet, what the forces were, on and on in ways to a level of details you couldn't possibly imagine. And all of that was done to try to understand what the helmet did or didn't do in terms of protection for our players. And that is an entirely different story, which I can get into at a different time in front of a different audience. But one thing that came from that, we discovered, was that incredibly large and rich data set. In part because each one of those breakdowns of each one of those on-field concussions included with it video angles from the dozens of cameras that exist at every NFL game. So we had a level of specificity around each one of these injuries that probably didn't exist, certainly not in sports, and maybe not anywhere else either. We were watching humans suffer concussions in an isolated environment on our fields, much like a laboratory, with a level of detail nobody ever had. So we took that after a couple of years and went a bit on a scouting trip and went to some of the biggest tech companies in the world and said, we have all of this data about human performance and injury. Is there anything that we can do with this beyond what we were using it for, which was literally breaking it down into all these different variables? And our friends at Amazon Web Services said, yeah, we can actually help you structure what you have there to better understand how the human body works. And so we started this project called The Digital Athlete to do just that. And the goal of it is to make our players safer. Why would we do this? If we have a tool, and this is much like, I guess, the equivalent of a digital twin, which is an industrial idea, how to make machines work better, that's existed for many years. What about if you could make the human body work better, or better understand when it doesn't work better? And so with all the data that we had, we figured we would try to implement this to better understand the experiences of our players, regardless of position, regardless of their time in the NFL, regardless of their injury history. Could we do something for each and every one of them on an individualized or position basis, or maybe even on a team-by-team basis, to better understand how they behave and what can be done to intervene before they were to get hurt? So it changed the paradigm for us from what are we doing after somebody gets injured to help them recover, rehabilitate, and get back to play, to what happened before. As one of our scientists likes to say, who worked in the military for a long time, what happened before boom? And see if we can intervene there and prevent injuries from happening in the first place. So what did we do, and how did we do it? We have sensors on every player in every play. It's a GPS locator, so we can identify where they are. And you see this during the games, how fast was this person running? It's based on the chip that they have in their shoulder pads. We know all of their equipment. Each and every helmet, shoulder pads, cleats, et cetera. We know what they're wearing. We know how fast they're running. We know the number of accelerations, the number of decelerations, how fast and slow they get in and out of their different cuts. And I mentioned all the camera angles, which are the essential part of all of this. So we have a 360-degree view with an amount of information about each individual player unparalleled in the history of our sport. And we use that information to combine that and begin to understand the players even at a player level. Here's a tool that we built as an example. This is a head detection system. So we look at the plays every week and understand each and every time a player's helmet hits something during the course of the game. Oops. I don't know if I'll play the video again, my apologies. Anyway, so we get that sort of data that goes into the player performance, what his experiences are. Are there players that have, more or less number of head impacts than others, and what are the forces behind those head impacts, as we try to understand what the risks associated with those behaviors in playing in the NFL to our players. For example, we know the linemen, offensive and defensive linemen, hit their heads on something at a much greater rate than any other player position on the field, and yet when they do, the velocities are pretty modest. You can imagine the offensive and defensive linemen butting up against each other during the course of a play. When a wide receiver hits his head, he hits it very infrequently, but unfortunately at a very high rate of speed. What impact does that have on him? What impact does that have over the course of a practice game or season on him or people like him? After all, it's a digital twin sort of example. So we take all of these simulations, we take all of this data, and we can use it and give it to the clubs to inform how players can behave. And the teams over the last couple of years have used this. What they do, everyone has in their locker room a vision of how every player experiences, for example, the preseason, and compare it to every other player at his position on the team and anonymously against every other team in the league. So they can say, hey, this player had too many accelerations, he's running hot, we need to pull back on his training. This player's had too many decelerations, we need to pull back. This player's not training enough, he's not at game speed. As a result of this tool, we restructured, the teams did their preseason, and we've seen a decrease in lower extremity injuries of more than 20% in the last couple of seasons, simply because they had a better understanding of how the athletes worked. We've also used it as a model. And this is the part that gets a lot of attention, not on the individualized basis, but at the league level. You're all aware of the kickoff change last year. You may have seen it if you're watching NFL games. Some people took notice of it, and some people called my office to talk about it and express their opinion about it. There's a range of ideas. Usually it's the negative ones that come to your desk. In any event, we had looked at that play because it stood out to us as an injury rate between 2 and 4 times a runner pass play. And for years, special teams coaches, head coaches, the league, the health and safety team looked at ways to improve it. And look, there was no huge mystery behind it. More spaces equaled more speed, equaled higher speed collisions, equaled more injuries. So how do we minimize that? Other leagues experimented with different versions of this, but we eventually came to look at lining up the players on the other side of the 50-yard line, closer to one another to minimize some of the space and the speed and to understand the play. But then we went to the digital athlete and input and said, well, what if all of the blocking and tackling behavior is going to occur at these spaces and these speeds? What's the injury rate going to be? Not just how many balls are going to be returned, the coaches are going to tell us that strategically, but how many injuries are going to occur. And we modeled thousands of NFL kickoffs and came to an injury rate, because we saw the injury rate decrease this year on concussions by 43% as a rate. We saw injuries overall, including lower extremities, decrease by about that much. The modeling, the AWS, artificial intelligence modeling, hit the number on the spot in terms of an injury rate, based on the speeds the players were moving and the behaviors they were engaged in. Now, we want more returns, and we're going to have to figure out ways to do that over the coming year, but these are the tools that we will use. Additionally, the hip drop tackle was much discussed. We saw a behavior where players were suffering high ankle sprains, a notoriously difficult injury to recover from during the course of the season, and we went back to the model, wrote algorithms to take a look at identify high ankle sprains and other related injuries, and saw a behavior involved in those that involved dragging a player down from behind in a swiveling technique by the tackler, which was unnatural compared to other tackles, and found that the injury rate on those sorts of plays were 20 times your average tackle. And so with the help of the computer, we identified this behavior, brought it to the competition committee, and prohibited it. That's going to happen a million times over. What's going to happen next with this? Well, we're going to expand the use in our games. We're going to understand player behavior better. We're talking to other sports leagues about how they can do things similar, both for performance as well as for health and safety. And maybe there are even applications beyond that. We think about healthcare systems. We think about rehabilitation centers. We think about occupational safety and health as ways that this platform can help better understand human behavior, human performance, and maybe someday getting a little bit more to the left of boom. Thank you.
And all of our presenters, as we get the furniture rearranged here, I would like to remind you to use the app. Excuse me. You make sure you use the app, submit your questions. I will try to get to them as soon as possible. This is only a 15-minute session here, so don't be shy. Start typing those questions in right away, and we will welcome all of our presenters back to the stage. All right, we have Jeff, Micheline, Chad, and Ak. Come on back, and we're another round of applause after those great presentations. Actually, all right. So we heard a lot about the many uses of AI and very different uses of AI here, but there's certainly some commonalities. How much, just to give an audience a sense as best you can, the investment in time, resources to get to a place where you have a good product, what should people in the audience be expecting when using an AI, for your business? Micheline, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole point of AI is to simplify, right? So the ultimate goal is obviously to be in a position where you can have less of your organization focusing on kind of those more tedious, kind of repetitive tasks, and more time obviously focused on more kind of strategic initiatives. So obviously there's like kind of initial phase of kind of education and training around being able to kind of leverage those tools and leveraging those tools specifically in a way that your organization feels comfortable. But for the most part, like really the ultimate goal shouldn't be that there has to be, kind of significant bandwidth increases in order to enable, tools cost money, of course, but, a lot of them are getting a lot more kind of affordable these days. So I think from a budgeting perspective, it's kind of a similar thing too, right? So initial investment up front, potentially updating your, obviously your data has to be in order in order for the AI to work. So updating your stack, initially some considerations, but again, ultimately it shouldn't actually be seen as an ongoing kind of cost burden, I would say.
Sure. Jeff, and putting together Digital Athlete.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we're benefited from the fact that we have a partnership in this space with AWS. So the resource commitment to it is born in part, with them as a partner, and they've not just been a financial partner, but they've been incredibly, strategic innovator with us into what we could potentially do. And I don't know if we could have done that on our own without them. But setting that to one side, it used to be, I mentioned looking at all these concussions in my talk. I used to sit in a room with a lot of the engineers, and we tried to categorize those by watching film every year. How many of those did you see on run plays or pass plays? How many of those did you see by linebackers lowering their heads before they impacted a running back? Whatever the case may be, to try to bin them in a way that made them useful for the competition committee, that's done, relatively instantaneously now. So the ability to build upon that and ask questions you couldn't ask before has probably no monetary value to our game. And the questions that we get back from the coaches or the general managers or the clubs as a whole or the competition committee, our rulemaking body, challenges us in so many ways to go in places that I don't think we would have contemplated we could have gone 5 years ago, just because we now have the time and the resource available to us to build upon it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mac?
Yeah, I think up front, it seems like a lot of work. There's a lot of hard work that goes into deciding who to work with, how best to evaluate, like I was talking about. But it's just one of those things that, you got to get across the hump and then see the benefits of it. And this is the story with everybody adopting AI. And of course, good partners, cloud providers like AWS, they can definitely kind of cushion it. But it follows from the conundrum that AI is supposed to make everything easier and faster. But those initial 6 months will be a lot of hard work, and you got to open up to the reality of it. But then you start to see how much more efficient your organization and your impact will start getting. So I would approach it from a backwards, kind of moving backwards type of mentality that one day you have to do this, and it's a question about how late do you want to be to the party type of thing.
I think one thing to add is the way that we're framing AI right now is that there's a lot of terminology around like the revolution that's coming, but we're trying to frame it more as the evolution. So take a little bit of, take a small bites at a time, show return, and keep moving forward. The worst thing you can do is go spend hundreds of millions of dollars and not see the impact of that.
Mm-hmm. And you were talking about the model of making sure you have a trustworthy, reliable AI. But once you have a product, or start getting results, you still have to convince someone to use it. How do you build that trustworthiness, and how do you make that sales pitch to an executive who might be skeptical?
I think Jeff said it well, and AI is actually forcing this kind of new evolution of ecosystem in sports. So you come with your partners are pushing for it, not only pushing for it, but paying for it because it's the right thing to do in your case, but also beneficial for their business and the property business in the long term. And you see the technology function coming together with the experience function, with the sponsorship function, and with also the engineers who are kind of making the case for how AI is actually going to, improve all elements of the business, and then be able to answer the questions that one of those departments can't. So it's the whole ecosystem coming together to give that well-rounded view.
Yeah, and it's one thing if you have like an on-demand, like a movie that you're translating, but when you're talking about live, suddenly, I know you've worked with the MLS Innovation Lab, and how do you make sure you get that buy-in that, hey, we're going to produce something that's to the quality of the MLS brand or whoever the partner happens to be?
Yeah, it's highly iterative, as we're talking about, right? It's not like one day you see a piece of AI and then the next day you deploy it. What happens behind the scenes is that you work on a continuous iteration. So when we did the Australian Open in Spanish this year, there's a whole week of testing where we actually did it and shallow streamed it without showing to the public. And then every day people watched it and they're like, all right, it works. Let's go. So it is that process, and that's why it's grueling. It's a lot of hard work. But the great thing about artificial intelligence is that once you get that right sweet spot, that's when you start scaling. So you need to know that, again, going back to the same point, it's a lot of hard work at first, but then you start seeing scale.
And Jeff, certainly that kickoff does look very different. Certainly you have a competition committee, you have a number of people sort of talking through the ideas, but at the end of the day, this is a very public product. How do you convince someone that it's worth trying?
Well, I think that's really the right symbol to talk about when you take a look at the evolution in the game based on what we talked about a few minutes ago, in that play looks very different. And the ability for the decision makers, in this case, the competition committee, the coaches, ultimately the clubs, to say, yes, we're willing to make the beginning of our game and various iterations throughout look very different from what it ever looked before and challenge our fans to accept it, has to be built on some level of trust in what it is you're inputting. And it's not a 1 week or 1 month or 1 year conversation. It's an ongoing thing where the million of conversations that went before it, where we showed data and explained what it was and had to answer their questions to build up the confidence to make a leap like that, that's not part of the story that people see. But for an organization like ours, very public facing, to make that sort of change that's going to affect the culture of our sport is not a snap decision. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of trust.
And I don't think there's any, even more than the kickoff when everyone was making a change, the fact that people were wearing Guardian caps in game, I think was probably unheard of 2 or 3 years ago, but that speaks to that culture that.
I think it does, and I think that ball starts rolling downhill once you develop that trust and you show them that the outcome of what it is you're proposing, whether good, bad, or indifferent, the outcome is what in fact you're predicting it to be. So you can make informed decisions on that and potentially try to answer questions that couldn't otherwise be answered. Leads in that direction and gives you the ability to say to a player, hey, wear something that's kind of goofy looking on your head because I can show you how much safer it's going to make you. And the data that we've shown you in various other use cases demonstrates the credibility behind it, gets you to that better place.
How important in building AI models is having the good, strong inputs, the data that's putting that all together, making sure it's, that you're not going to have hallucinations in the algorithms. Maybe you want to take the first crack at that?
Yeah, our belief is that's everything, right? Obviously what's fueling the model is going to impact the model's success. So if your data is, siloed, incomplete, uncleaned, you're going to have a lot of challenges with having kind of that AI kind of work efficiently for you, right? Because it's all going to be all outcomes are going to be based on that data foundation. So we are very strong believers in Snowflake that the key is really starting with getting your data in a good place. But then, even from there, obviously, models have to, it's iterative, right? Like they have to learn and they have to, you have to be kind of constantly training the models so that you're building kind of that model knowledge of which answers were right, which answers were wrong, which lined up kind of with what you were searching for or didn't. But yeah, it absolutely has to start with kind of good quality data and as robust as you possibly can be.
Maybe Ak, take it next.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we hear this word of large language models thrown a lot around. And when you hear that, you're like, okay, these require a lot of data, a lot of number crunching, but kind of what we have realized in our industry, and we're pretty hardcore into speech AI. We create audio models and translation models. What we have realized, it's not just necessarily the amount of data you have, but it's actually the small scope of high quality data that actually matters in creating the models that actually work. So if you have a large swath of data, it can seem daunting, but actually what you're looking for is just the highest quality one, and that is very valuable to start off with. These days, you can even build small language models. So we've built models that can fit on your phone. They don't need to be large if you're trying to do one thing and one thing specifically. You don't need to build a ChatGPT. but you just need to be able to work with a partner that can help your fans have a great experience. So if it's vertical, even little but high quality data works to create models for your use case.
So SLM, small language model, because you can't use little because we already got the L, right?
Tiny language models.
Tiny language models. And Jeff, you talked about the painstaking work of the manual data collection, but then as more of it gets automated, how do you make sure that it's as accurate as can be? And I know you've done a lot with crowdsourced innovations, and you're open to ideas from everywhere. But then how does that quality control?
Yeah, no question. We have the benefit of being able to solicit ideas from the world, and the entrepreneurs who are on this stage are going to be more expert in these places than the NFL is. But the challenge on the health and safety side around the models that we create is taking what looks smart to the computer and making it applicable to a football game. Right? So while I may know a little bit more every day about human performance and the potential for injury, which is what the digital athlete ultimately is, handing that to a coach and saying, if we're going to work on somebody's running mechanics, excuse me, or increasingly on efficient blocking or tackling techniques, say, teach it this way. And they say, nah, I taught it that way for a really long time, and I've won a whole lot of games doing it this way. And we're like, but the computers say, and they're like, okay, Jeff, you can have your computers. We're going to worry about winning the game on Sunday. That's a different sort of challenge, I think, and that's one that's going to take some time.
Yeah, no, we had Ndamukong Suh on this stage yesterday, and I asked sort of a similar question. If you was to get an AI recommendation were to say in the fourth quarter you're about to injure your hamstring, would you want to come out? And obviously, of course, he wouldn't, unless they're up by a huge amount. But the competitive drive is so important.
Rational matters.
Yeah,
and it's important, but it's not everything.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. At the end of the day, the goal isn't to prevent all injuries; it's to win games.
Correct.
And then I asked earlier about building consensus among stakeholders internally and getting the executive to embrace an AI model. But there's a good question from the audience. How do you then convince fans or consumers? And certainly we've seen more generative AI in sports, but mostly a lot of the products have been internal efficiency plays rather than like direct fan consumer products. How do we get to that next step and get people to buy in? Maybe you get to start this time, Ak.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's new if you think about it. Let's take the example of what we do. Subtitling a live feed isn't a new concept. It's been going around. But it's that added layer of generative AI where you can even do the voice and make it feel hyper-realistic is something that's new. So it's about a little bit of thinking about it a different way and not feeling like this is really a new thing. It's just another technology that is increasing capability. So think about what you've done in the past when you've released new technology to fans, and then what strategies have worked in enabling fans to kind of adjust to that. They would apply similarly. This is just another leap ahead. So I really wouldn't think about this as something different happening or a different game plan. It's about how have you rolled out technology before in a way fans have loved.
And I wouldn't discount the opportunity in terms of as long as you're starting from a place of what is actually going to improve and enhance the journey from the fans' perspective and work backwards from there, you have a lot of opportunity to drive a whole bunch of value that they're going to appreciate and understand. When I was with Yahoo Sports, I did a deal with WC Sports, who was mentioned yesterday, to personalize the highlights that any given, I think it was NBA we started with, any given NBA fantasy player would receive. So every single day they were getting a personalized highlight reel based on their fantasy picks, based on other important kind of picks within their league. And the amount of I guess, response from users of the product about how this kind of was changing their life and just making kind of the game so much more fun for them. I think it speaks to if you can really just focus on I'm in this to drive value for the fan, like it's not going to be seen necessarily as a forced function.
I agree with that. I mean, it's not my domain necessarily, but understanding fan behavior and making life easier on them is a huge benefit to our game. And even if it's something that people don't generally see, like we work closely with AWS on our scheduling. The number of inputs that go into that in terms of competitive things, logistical things, conflicts for stadiums, to get that right and for somebody to help us do that. The fan doesn't necessarily see it, but at the end of the day, but the world's better as a result of it. And their life hopefully is made not just as the league more fair, but their life in terms of getting to and from a game and understanding all of that better is improved. There's no question.
Yeah, and football fans are the most rational group of people on this planet.
We count on the emotion. We count on the emotion as much as possible.
Awesome.
I think the way that we think about a fan is on a continuum of share of heart and share of wallet. And when you think about the business side of sport, we're all trying to get more butts in seats, more advertisers are in front of eyeballs. But sometimes the investment is really for that share of heart to really help build the brand and the loyalty and not treating everything as something that's monetizable.
Awesome. Well, I wish we could continue this further, but I see a blinking red light over there. So for Micheline, Chad, Jeff, and Ak, round of applause. Thank you all very much.